Hello there, this is Cindy Pope. I'm going to share with you my experiences with my first couple cuts with my new Curio machine. I'm going to show you first how to etch with an edge cut and then a very detailed internal cut, and these are teeny tiny pieces. Okay, I've set up a small test cut file. It's about a 1/2 inch etching with an outside cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use all of the platforms that come with the silhouette. So I'm going to use the 1mm, the 2mm, and the 2mm and put the mat on top. I think that's considered 5 layers. And then I'm going to go ahead and set up my cut settings. I'm going to switch to advanced. And you'll note that I put the etching tool in the blue holder, which is the holder to the right, and I put the cutting tool in the red holder, which is the left, which is helpful for me because I use blue for etching and red for cutting. And I'm going to go ahead and set up the materials for each of these. I'm going to etch at 5 to start with, and then we're going to go ahead and cut for 2 cards, and I'm going to put the cut at 6. That ended up being a little bit high. I think 5 would have worked a little bit better. I cut all the way through the protective film, as you'll see. So we're going to go ahead and then send it to the silhouette. Okay, here's my new silhouette. As you can see, it's got 2 holders. So I've got the blade on the left, which is the red holder, and the etching tool on the right, which is the blue holder. It's also got storage places on the side, which is very nice. It has a platform that you put different slats on, and the slats are 1mm, 2mm, and 2mm, and then I put a mat on top. I think in the software you'll see that's going to be considered 5 layers. I'm not sure how the software affects what you do, how many layers you put in, but I'm actually putting that setting in. And what you want to do is you want to start with the machine off. It's a little bit different than with the portrait or the cameo. And you push it all the way through until it comes a little bit out the back. And then you hit the on button, and what it does is it sets the tools right in the upper left-hand corner. So it's perfectly calibrated, even if you push it back a little bit further, this is a really nice thing because our clay is always going to be in the right place, much better than the old system on the portrait. So what I've done is I've set this blade to 6. As I said before, I think it could cut at 5, which is very nice. And this is Hadar's new One Fire Flex Brilliant Bronze, which cuts really, really nicely. I'm not sure about other clays and how they're going to cut. And what it's doing right now is it's doing the etching first. I'm not quite sure I've figured out how the ordering goes, but etching went first, which is what I wanted. The etching is moving a little bit different than it did before, and I'm not sure. It looks like it's doing a good job. It seems like it's moving slower, but it might just not be picking up as many times. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut, and it cut beautifully. And we're going to take a look at how it looks afterwards. And it etched very, very nicely. It's very light, a little tricky to see here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to etch again, and I'm going to etch this time at a setting of 15. And then we'll see if it gets a little deeper. And I think I'm going to also go up to 20. Okay, I'm going to adjust my cut settings. You did note that it cut in exactly the right place, which is really, really nice. I'm going to cut one more time. It certainly can't hurt. But I'm going to change this etching to 15. And we know that the number for etch has to do with the pressure. You can learn all about that if you take my class. There's a bonus video on all these user-defined settings. So I've set that to 15, and that's going to give it a little bit deeper etch, and I think that's going to do a little bit better, and then we can go through one more time and even go deeper if it's not too clear. So here it is. I'm sending it to the silhouette a second time, and it's going to go a little bit deeper, and still you want to be careful not to go too far because it is 2-card clay. And again, it's moving a little bit slower, but I think etching just as well. And I did note when I went through the third pass that I'd set this up for the etching tool, and you really want to set it up for sketch pen. I will do some testing with all the new tools and see if they etch a little bit differently, and we'll see what we want to do going forward. And then I'm cutting it one more time. And it turned out looking very, very nicely. But I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit deeper. Okay, I'm going to etch a little bit deeper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck the red because I don't need to cut anymore. Hopefully it's cut all the way through. We'll know in a little bit. But I'm going to go through, and I looked at the etching, and I wanted to tell you I had set it up wrong. I had set it up for etching tool. And what we really want is the sketch pen. And the sketch pen was really tricky to get to. I had to put the arrow very much up at the top, hit the shift key and the arrow, and that was the only time the sketch pen would appear. So I'm going to switch it to sketch pen, and I'm going to have to switch all those other settings. So that may have been why it was going a little bit slow since I've updated this version of the software. So let's go ahead and try it with the sketch pen and send to the silhouette, and we're only going to do the etching. I wanted to give you a quick close-up shot of that drop-down menu. You can see sketch pen is down at the bottom. I'm going to go through all these different settings and see what works the best. For the blade, you're always going to use the ratchet tool, but I'm not sure with the deep set blade what we'll be doing. Okay, this time I'm going to take the etching tool and I'm going to increase the pressure or the thickness to 20, and so it's going to press down a little bit harder. I'm not going to cut. I've unchecked the cutting, and so we're going to go ahead and see what it looks like when we go a little bit deeper. Remember, I changed it from the etching tool to the sketch pen, but it appears to me like it's moving exactly the same. So I'll play around with all the different tools, especially when the deep cut blade and the stippling tool come in, and we'll see what the capabilities are for all those. The next thing I'm going to do is work with the embossing tips and see if I can get a different etch effect, and I think we might be able to do some very interesting carved look, is what I'm hoping for. So I'm going to brush it off, and it etched beautifully, and again it's only a 1/2 inch, so that's a very detailed etching for a 1/2 inch. I'm going to remove the protective film from the mat. And what I actually did is something I learned from Paul Long, is I covered my whole mat with protective film so that where the actual mat is not getting dirty. Since I only have one mat at this point, I'm trying to be pretty careful with it. And you can see it came right out, so I probably could have cut it a 5. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the next step. Okay, I have a new little design, and this is a very, very finely detailed cut. I'm using a brand new, very sharp blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to cut 1 card. I've actually set the blade to 3. Since the 2 card cut all the way through, I don't like it when the little teeny tiny pieces cut all the way through. So I'm going to try 3, and and this is for notation only, so it doesn't really matter. And so I'm going to go ahead and send to the silhouette, and we'll see how it cuts. Okay, I have a little teeny tiny square of Hadar's new One Fire Flex Brilliant Bronze. I'm doing a very detailed tiny cut of a little bee on that. It's about 3/4 inches. The actual final one is going to be a little bit tinier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to only cut. So I've left the etching tool in there, but it's not being used. And it's cutting nice and smooth. And I've set the blade to 3 because you remember that I cut all the way through with 2 cards. So I'm thinking, and Hadar's, this new clay cuts really, really beautifully. And I think that's why I'm having such a nice experience with it. So it cut beautifully. I'm going to brush it off, and it looked like it cut all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and send it a second time just for good measure after I check and see if it cut all the way through. And I think it did. I could have done a little test cut, but I wanted to start with this one. Okay, we're going to send it one more time to the silhouette. And again, this machine is so beautifully calibrated, it's always going to go right back to the exact same place. And this new platform system, I think, is seems a little more complicated, but I really think it's giving a better surface than the old bottom of the machine was giving. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it off. We'll take a quick look, and it looks great. And we're going to remove it. I wanted to quickly show you a quick one of the butterfly, which etched beautifully, and then we're going to turn this over, and I'm going to run a tissue blade over it to get it started. And if you've got a really detailed cut, you can use a tissue blade for the whole thing if you don't want to stress the clay at all. But I'm just pulling it up because I kind of wanted to save that little bee underneath to use on another project. So here it is. It cut beautifully, and it's teeny tiny and a very detailed cut, so there's not a lot of clay between the different parts. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this as an overlay on something else. And here's a final picture of the project, and I think both projects turned out beautifully, and so I'm going to go ahead and play with the embossing tools next. And I'll let you know how it goes. Happy cutting!